body other than the face itself.
There are, in fact, 4 different types of, what we think of as Sasquatch or Bigfoot.
Very wide, pronounced nose. There was also a very ominous odor.
Phase 1 is to identify opportunities. I walked into a small clearing in less than 10-15 feet away from this enormous creature, and it scared the living hell out of me. Phase 2 is conducting investigations both of witnesses and locations. The size of the thing, it was 4 or 5 feet across the shoulders. Phase 3 is profiling research areas, what's there, how they move, feeding, things like that. About 8 feet tall, I guessed around 800 pounds. It was massive. I had no idea that anything like that existed. Phase 4 is create an intercept plan. I decided to shoot in the air to see if maybe it would scare it off. Phase 5 is the intercept and resolve the issue phase. It didn't do anything, didn't react, and then I heard a noise from my right rear, and from out behind some brush come another one and walked over by the first one. That's when I decided to do what the dog did. I took off running. Welcome to Witness of the Unknown. Hello everyone, I'm talking with TW today. TW, I know you and I have been chatting about a situation, a recent one that's been going on in New Mexico. I wanted to start off by doing a little bit of background first for people who may not have heard you talk before. For anybody who hasn't heard TW, he's a police officer, retired Army, and in that career you were originally Special Forces and then went to criminal investigation. So you've got quite a background in law enforcement and those kind of circles, and with the military, and you're a combat vet. So, and now you're back in school for some different training. I wanted to start first of all, and it's kind of interesting to me before, and it sort of has a connection with what we're going to talk about. But I remember when I first started college. I think even before the beginning of the first term started, my advisor was one of my anthropology professors. And I proceeded to barge into his office and sit him down, and, he didn't know me from Adam, and I kind of pigeonholed him about the whole Bigfoot thing. And, I was surprised. He was a great guy, and he really had an open mind about it, even though he didn't believe in the creatures. He actually entertained all my questions for some time, and then beyond that. But you had a little different experience with one of your instructors. I remember you were working on a paper, so you got a hold of me for some information about what to do. So what I wanted to do, have you talk about a little bit about what happened during that exchange.
Well, I mean, we were in a lecture class, which a lecture class is basically we all kind of pick out papers to read, and then we present the case of yay or nay for the merits of the paper. And most of them are pretty much research papers, and most of and really it's, I mean, we got, for all practical and intents purposes, we got kids sitting in class with an old fart like me. So, anyway, these kids were doing papers on, the possibility of, genetically bringing back the thylacine, which is the Tasmanian wolf.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Yay or nay on killing predators for the purposes of saving livestock. Is hunting predators a good thing?
Sure.
And another paper was on, if I remember right, it was on the merits of the humpback chub and the amount of money that we as the United States put into trying to save that species.
Mm-hmm.
And, the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, here we go, guys. We're throwing millions of dollars at this animal and its natural habitat, which is the Colorado River itself, had been altered so much
mm-hmm.
that God bless, here we are. We're throwing money, good money after bad.
Right. I think your paper was the Minnesota Iceman, wasn't it?
Yeah, mine was on the Minnesota Iceman because I got to thinking, I went to the professor and I said, hey, look, we're doing all these, feel good possibility papers about saving this species or that species or bringing back this other species. Can I get, can I go off on a tangent and just have a little bit of fun?
Mm-hmm.
And the professor kind of looked at me and raised an eyebrow and he smiled and he said, what are you going to do? And I said, let's do it on Bigfoot. So anyway, he laughed. He said, sure, go ahead. So, and that year I had him for 2 classes. I had him seminar class, and I had him for wildlife law and history. So, anyways, long and the short of it is, I used Minnesota Iceman, brought it up. Of course, the professor's in the back just giggling. And, a lot of people were like, having as much fun with it as I was. Because there's that element of skepticism.
Sure.
And it should be. It's not something that we see on a daily basis. Mainstream science has not acknowledged it.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least is, not publicly at least. There's a few professors out there, PhDs piled higher and deeper that have acknowledged its existence. Some of them that I absolutely hold in high regard and others I don't.
Mm-hmm.
But, this one kid, and I'll never forget him, boy, he just come off the deep end. And he was pissed. We're supposed to be taking this material seriously. And I'm like, that's why I brought this subject up. One, we need to lighten up a little bit. There's a natural part of evolution is extinction. And whether it's our fault or it's not our fault, there are some species that we just, we could throw money at it, hand over fist. And we're just not going to save that species as much as we try. And then there's other species that because of our interaction with it or our misdeeds on this earth, some minor changes have brought them back. A great example of that is the California condor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I believe in the subject material? Absolutely. Did I use a quasi-scientific magazine to bring it up? Yeah. I brought the same magazine up that brought this to everybody's attention, that brought Tarzan to us.
Very true.
But it doesn't make it any less true. And it doesn't make it any less factual. The problem with it is that we got enough people out there, jerks like me that can have enough fun with it that still keep that question in the back of their mind, is it really real?
I think the thing that really stuck out in my mind when you were telling me about this was the fact that the instructor kind of dug his heels in because there were no footprints of juveniles.
Exactly.
Until I sent you a bunch of them to show him.
He said, why don't we have, footprints of juveniles? And that's when I called you, and you sent me all those pictures, and I said, now look. And he goes, holy crap. I said,
we got lots.
what person in their right mind is going to let a juvenile walk barefoot in snow?
Yeah.
For extended distance. Nobody's going to do that, and especially out in the middle of nowhere.
I thought that whole situation was kind of a good foundational point to kind of kick this off, because now what's the scope of your training you're going through?
Wildlife management and ecology.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
It's within line of my interests. And I'll probably end up going back into law enforcement as a game warden. But
so you've been as part of that you've been actually been working. It's not work study, but you've been working with rangers out in forest settings, correct?
Exactly.
And
I was the go-to guy last year for the law enforcement ranger. I held a wildlife internship. I'm still an active officer. I still work for Vinton PD, though Vinton PD had been disbanded.
Mm-hmm.
But we had open cases, and we needed somebody to wait for final adjudication on all these cases. So, much to the city father's chagrin, they still have to pay me.
Well, that's interesting, because now you have the connection with people. Now, were they Forest Service?
Yes.
And I guess now there was one individual, and I don't know if he's the same one that you've been talking to recently about this current situation.
No, that individual was he's a New Mexico game and fish game warden.
And
that come up to me and say,
and that's the current guy you're talking to.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it was kind of a roundabout way to this situation, but it's kind of interesting. First of all, how you got involved in schooling and this whole situation. Of course, you had a sighting last year in the area you were working with as part of this training.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the other side of the state, but
right.
But in a national. But this year I got. I just happened to run into the game warden. We're talking, and as a matter of fact, we were talking about the elk that ran into my pickup.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow or another, I kind of got on the question. I'm like, well, what are you doing today? And he said, oh, hell, I got to go investigate a couple of teenage kids that got overturned in a boat, and got chased out of a local lake. And I'm like, really? Yeah, he said it's real weird. It's probably a bunch of, it could very well be a bunch of, older guys that seen these kids at a fishing spot. But he said, the Native Americans in the area don't go to that lake at night anyway, so I know that it's not them. And they got some real superstitions about that lake. Well, it kind of tweaked my interest. And, I got to digging around and got the full story from the game warden. Kids were out fishing. It was the middle of the night. Something come out in the water with them and absolutely upturned the boat and then run them out of the lake area.
It chased them out.
Basically, it chased them out. So, it kind of tweaked my interest. And I asked him, I said, what lake is it? And he goes, it's Sawmill Lake. And Sawmill Lake is it's one of those semi-man-made lakes. It's a catch basin for runoff, but there's a lot of fish there that people like to watch and like to go fish. So I'm like, well, yeah, I'll go check it out. And I got to talk to some of the local natives, Navajos, and they said, yeah, we don't go to that lake at night. And I was like, okay.
Did they say why?
And they said that there's a creature there that we can go fishing there all day long. But if we're there after the sun sets, it gets upset. And they had a name for it, and I probably should have wrote it down or recorded it, and I didn't, because it was just, I got so involved into how they were telling the story to me, and, you know, and they were telling me different things where people had absolutely just ignored that whole premise that there might be something there that's dangerous, go fishing there, and then they either get run out or they get hurt. So I'm listening to some of the stories, and I'm like, okay, well, I called the game warden up, and I said, hey, look, where was the spot? And he told me, he said, it's on the east side of the lake, over by this big ranch. And I won't mention the ranch's name because I don't want them getting all. It's a private ranch that has a lot of hunting and fishing in the not just at that lake, but on the ranch itself.
Yeah, we definitely want to respect their privacy.
Yeah, I don't want to, and I know the owners, so I don't want to put them in a bad spot where we get a bunch of people running out there checking it out. But it's a good sized privately owned chunk of property, and it sits between two parcels of BLM land. And the lake is actually on BLM land, and the state controls the lake because they control all above ground water. So, you know, I said, okay. I said, is there multiple landings there where, you know, you can launch boats? And he goes, no. He said there's one on the east side, and they were about 600 meters to the northwest of that boat landing. And I said, okay. So, you know, I went out there and not expecting a whole lot, but I wanted to see what I could see. And, you know, I'm out there for a few hours and I'm kicking around, and I'd seen some sign, but not nothing that would really make me go, okay, there's something going on here. Seen some old sign that was, you know, the stick structures, but you could tell that they'd been there a long time. So I'm like, okay, this is kind of odd. About that time, it's about 10:30 at night, sun had set, and I'm waiting, and I'm starting to hear some whooping, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of odd. Could be because that area is notorious for having Mexican gray wolves are in that area. They got reintroduced about 10 years. So that area it wouldn't be unusual to see a Mexican gray wolf. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, it could be coyotes, could be wolves. So the more I listen, the closer the whooping's getting, and it goes from whooping to I've heard it from other people called a looting call. Mm-hmm. Then about 11:30, 11:45, almost midnight, that's when I start hearing the tree knocking, and it's getting closer. And it started way over on the far side of the lake, and it was making its way towards me. And this is a span of over, I got there about 8:30 at night. Sun didn't set until almost 9. Finally start getting some, where it's getting interesting. Didn't start happening until about 10:30, quarter to 11. And then that's when I started hearing stuff. And then all of a sudden, after about 11:45, almost midnight, that's when I start hearing the wood knocking, and it's getting closer. Well, of course, I'm watching and I'm tracking it, and over a span of about 15 minutes, it had moved because this is, I mean, it's a pretty good size water catchment basin. It probably moved 3/4 of a mile in about 30 minutes, maybe 15.
Mm-hmm.
So about 12:15 or so, I could tell that it was within a few hundred yards of me. And, I could hear movement. I could hear some wood knocking. Heard calls in 2 different locations at that point, one close to me and then one replied. Well, when it got within what I thought was maybe about within 100 yards, I'm thinking in the back of my brain, I'm going, I got an M4 with me. I got a 1911 45, and I got a Glock 22 40 caliber pistol. If I shoot one of these, there's another one around.
Oh yeah.
They rarely go out themselves. They generally travel in pairs or in groups. And yeah, I could probably make a pretty good stand of it, but one of them's going to get me. And for whatever reason, in the back of my mind, early on, something said, take your pepper spray with you. Worst case scenario, you might run into a bear. And, you don't want to have to explain why you shot a bear.
Yeah, true.
So, I pulled a pepper. It wasn't a brand new can. It was one of my older cans that never got used. And the expiration date had been expired for about the past 5 or 6 years. So I pull it out, and I shoot this circle of pepper spray about 30 feet in front of me, just one giant circle. And, I no sooner got done. And that's when the closest one that was to me started really whooping. And then I started hearing growling, and it was starting to make its way around me. And I'm like, oh, shit, I pissed it off. And when, if anybody's had any experience with pepper spray, they know that the minute you cut that can loose, you could smell it. It won't affect you, but you can smell it because there's enough particulates in the air that you can smell. It's like burnt chili is what it smells like. So I'm thinking, shit, I really screwed up this time. So I wasn't that far from the truck, and I make my way back to the truck, and I could still hear growling. I could still hear movement. I could tell it was walking on 2 legs just by how it was moving. You can tell the difference between, how a quadruped moves and how a biped moves.
Right.
Just by the steps. But the interesting thing was that it was growling, and it was growling loud enough that I could hear it at 100 yards, 100 meters.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was definitely vocal in its displeasure of me spraying pepper spray out there. And of course, after all that, I get in the truck, turn on the lights. I don't see anything, but that area's got a lot of mixed conifers in it. There's a lot of ancient lava flows with old black lava rock floating around there. There's a lot of areas where there's like arroyos or runoffs that, a full-size man could be at the bottom of that runoff and still have another 5 or 10 feet above his head, and nobody had ever seen him walk in or out. So, like, okay, this area's got good water. There's enough food resources. Not in the way of so much vegetation, but definitely and this is just right after the rains had started. So the vegetation hadn't come back in full swing yet.
Yeah.
So, but I'd found, wild strawberry plants that were still green. I'd found a bunch of raspberry bushes. So there's something there for them to eat. The question is how much? And at that point, right when the rain started, it's going to be another couple of weeks before they start producing anything. So, I got out of there, went back to the game warden, told him what had happened. He's kind of straddling the fence on whether to believe in the subject matter or not. But, like I told him, I said, I know your boss. Your boss just glazes over, rolls his eyes, and walks the other way. Now, I don't know if he's just tired of hearing about the subject matter or he just absolutely doesn't believe in it. But I would be real cautious about bringing this up to Gertz. He's going to have a fit.
I was thinking something too when you first told me that he find 8 sets of tracks after the kids got turned over.
He'd found different sets of tracks in different varying sizes, but he didn't take any pictures of it. He just said, I found all these tracks, and
that's a pretty sizable group.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. He's one of these game wardens that could get jaded real quick, and then again he could go the opposite direction, going, okay, we got a real issue here. And like I told him, I said, I don't expect you to believe or not believe. I expect you to keep an open mind. And something happened. Something got those kids boogered. And I don't see a javelina going out in the middle of the lake, upturning a boat. I just don't see it.
Yeah, it's not likely.
They're big enough. They got enough strength to do it, and some of them can get up to mid-thigh size. But I just don't see them walking out in the middle of the lake doing that. They'll definitely chase you, but they won't. They won't purposely come out in the body of water just to overturn a boat.
Yeah, you sure wouldn't think so.
No. So we talked about it a little bit, and I didn't get a chance to go back out there as much as I would like to. But I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting on Jay to come back and let me know. He said he was going to go out there and sit one night. And I said, well, just be real careful. Because if you run into something that you don't quite understand, I can tell you right now, they get real pissy when you shoot at them.
Yeah.
To the degree that they retaliate.
Oh, yeah.
And you will find that you are looking at your sidearm or your shotgun thinking, I don't have a big enough gun.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
So I said, just be aware of that. And I would not rely on your sidearm so much as I would a shotgun. And it better be, at least a 12 gauge. So, and I'd have it loaded with, triple aught buck or even slugs.
Oh yeah.
Double aught buck will do the job, but and I said I'd have it loaded with magnum loads.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just so that way you're making penetration. So he kind of chuckled and he said, "Well, I'll keep that in mind." And I know he's got it. He's got all kinds of shit in his truck.
Oh,
so,
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I know he's got magnum loads because we'd had 3 bear attacks. 2 were unprovoked and 1 was provoked.
Wow.
And it was kind of an unusual year because it was so dry. We didn't have as much snowfall as we should have. And I got to talk to some of the ranchers, and they said, "Well, yeah," he said, "we were even seeing bears in the middle of January, still roaming around."
That's amazing.
Yeah, he said they just didn't get down into the temperatures that they needed to kind of ease them into torpor, which is hibernation. So they come out in the summertime. They were starved.
Oh yeah.
They used a lot of their resources during the wintertime while they were awake. So when they finally did go to sleep for their winter rest, they didn't, they didn't have enough body fat stored up to keep them going. So they got up really hungry, and they were actually out there predating on livestock.
Oh boy.
Which is unusual for black bear, but they were actually going after livestock. So they were trying to build up their fat reserves again. And of course, we had a pretty good sized fire this year. We had several, but we had one that was it was almost 65,000 acres.
Oh wow, yeah, we've had some pretty big ones around here lately too.
Yeah, and it kind of it really kind of made me think. And I talked to a couple other people, one of them being Brenda Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And told her what was going on. And she said, "Oh, I got to go check that out." And I said, "Well, I'm leaving in a few days, so if you want to come check it out, by all means, please come down before I take off because I want to go out."
You know, it's interesting.
And she didn't.
I've actually talked to a couple of different people recently that had sightings in that region, and it's just sort of coincidental, you know. I interviewed a lady about a week ago or 2 weeks ago that had. I think it was Highway 10 she said she was on, and her and her kids watched one cross the highway on all fours, and it was really interesting, the description she gave of how it moved and everything, and another guy was a contractor at a military base, and they had a bunch of experiences, so.
Well, and here's the thing, and me and you've talked several times about the, their nomadic ways, or that some are nomadic. I'm starting to think that there's two distinct sets. Mm-hmm. Some are nomadic, where other bands are a little more sessile, and they tend to stay in one area. And they, if they got enough food and enough water, it makes no sense for them to move around a whole lot if they're still getting a lot of good groceries and a lot of good water. They stay in one area for a long time.
Yeah, it seems to be happening with Don in Maine. They're apparently back on his property. Well,
and that of course I pick on Don a little bit. Yeah, the shroom man.
The shroom man.
Him and his two cohorts, Shaganova and the man bikini guy.
I did a recording with Don and Jeremiah last week. So I told him, I said, well, we hadn't done the group conversations for a while, so I said I kind of wanted to do those again occasionally. So we'll have to get you and those two guys on and have the jokes going like we did a while back.
Yeah. And that's the good thing about our group is that we tend to razz each other pretty hard. Of course, I'm the chief asshole. I'm the one that's always picking on. But so it was it's always in the good and name of good fun. But and like I told Nom, I said, gosh, if you've got a group that's kind of centralized or localized, they may diminish their roam radius, mm-hmm. not go as far as other groups do. They may not travel or be as nomadic. Where it's been speculated that some groups in my area will go from almost as far as Rio Rancho, clear down into the Texas Davis Mountains.
Mm. That's not unusual because there was one. I always think back, to the Bluff Creek area in the '60s. There was one individual, because there were 6 Sasquatches identified that were going through that area periodically, and of course, the footprints are very distinctive. You can identify individuals that way, and this one individual. They found, and I don't recall the specifics offhand, when they found these particular prints, but They found the tracks in that area one year. The following year, they were 150 miles to the south. So, traveling those kind of distances, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's because of where they're at. Maybe it may be ingrained or a learned trait to stay on the move.
And those ranges are big. They're a lot bigger than people think they are.
Yeah, but I keep hearing the same thing from this, from the Navajos in that area, is that area has been active for years, and it doesn't matter what time of year it is.
Oh yeah, so they're not going too far.
Yeah, they're staying within that one area, and then there's always the speculation: are they a type 1, type 2, type 3, or type 4?
Mm-hmm.
The one I saw last year, at the distance I saw it, to me looked every bit like a type 1 or type 2.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It was big. It was bulky. I didn't get to see the teeth, which is a distinguishing factor between type 1 and type 2, but I could definitely tell that it was, when I saw it, it was digging in the dirt, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of unusual. There's a bear, and then all of a sudden it stood up and looked right at me.
Yeah, not a bear.
I'm like, no, that ain't a bear. And as soon as it saw me, it hauled ass to the other side of the meadow, mm-hmm. where I saw it, and I was up of the mountain. And it was getting. I mean, it cleared that area, and it was probably, God, if memory serves me right, that meadow was probably a 200 or 300 acre circumference circle, mm-hmm. on top of the mountain. No trees in the middle of it. It was digging in the ground. It was all of 120 meters away from me. And the minute it stood up, I could tell that thing was huge. It was huge when I looked at it. I'm thinking, because I saw it from the backside, I'm like, that's kind of unusual. Bear digging in the middle of the forest, during the middle of the day. When it stood up, well, it ain't no damn bear.
Yeah.
And it explains why it was digging. And it cleared the distance from where it was at when I first saw it to the other side into the tree line in a matter of a few seconds.
They're quick.
And it wasn't even really running. It was a fast-paced walk. Mm-hmm. But I cleared that distance. So I'm like, okay, well, in that area, when there's good rain on top of those mountains, in the Capitan area, there's a lot of good water to be had. There's a lot of wildlife in that area where they could eat. There's a lot of, substance, mm-hmm. that they can get vegetable-wise. But I can't see them during a dry spell wanting to stay in that area because the water dries up quick.
Yeah, they must be traveling somewhere for the water.
And the one water resource, which is the what the hell they call it, Rio Benito River, is another 15 miles to the south of that mountain range.
Yeah.
So, and I would expect to see them there a whole lot.
But it's not unusual for them to go 20 miles for food or water.
Yeah. But this area is kind of interesting because, it's like I told you, I was out there doing monitoring on an area, and, I get down to a point where there's an elk skull in the middle of the road. Mm-hmm. And that was before, I got word that they had some activity at Sawmill Lake, and this is clear another 45 miles to the south of where Sawmill Lake's at. Mm-hmm. I'm just driving on. It's a back road. It's a remote road, and there's this. Right in the middle of the road, there's this elk skull sitting right in the middle of the road.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I can't see not that it's not possible, but I just can't see the reasoning behind a human being putting an elk skull in the middle of a road, and especially a road that is, as remote as that road was.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see any. I didn't see any other sign.
Yeah.
So I kind of just blew it off as maybe some damn kid on a 4-wheeler, found a elk skull and decided to put it in the middle of the road. But
yeah, it's
after
difficult
that,
unless you get some kind of related sign or something that says, "Hey, this
other
may be
corroborating evidence."
Exactly.
And there wasn't any. I mean, I'd seen some old stick structures, and like I said, I mean, when I say old, I mean old.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be that that they were in good shape at one time, but I mean, these look like they hadn't been fussed with in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell one was laying down on the ground that was part of that whole structure, that either the wind blew it over or an elk come by and an antler caught it,
mm-hmm.
Pulled it down. And these weren't overly big logs, but they were pretty good sized logs. They had a lot of length to them. So, you kind of just go, well, maybe at one time there was some activity. I didn't see any footprints whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But, one guy in the group kind of got upset, and he's like, well, you need to do this, and you need to do that. Why don't you have a GoPro with you? And I'm like, dude, I don't even own a GoPro. I said, do you not even realize that these animals are not stupid? For some reason, they may not understand how a camera works, but they know it's something to avoid.
Sure. Well, they probably think it's a weapon, anything somebody's holding.
Yeah. And they don't want it, when somebody's got one on them, they tend to be a little antsy about that person. They give them a wide berth because it's not something that's natural on a person that they'd seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So, I could have a GoPro on top of my head. That doesn't make it that they're going to want to even come close to me. So, I said, this is an initial investigation. And it's, it's one of those things that, you take baby steps. You don't try to, you go in there like a bull in a china shop and you could just shoot the whole damn thing to hell.
Yeah.
Or you can get yourself hurt bad.
It'll take some time to piece it together. I mean, you're exactly right. You can't just rush into investigating a location.
Yeah, you start going in there and rooting around and you start disturbing a whole lot of stuff, and people get real, not just people, but these things get really picky about that stuff.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Well, you're definitely gonna have to. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say you're gonna have to update us, as things go along and you develop that more.
Yeah, and it's going to be one of my go-to spots, just because of what I've heard from the natives. And like I told that guy, he's kind of new to the group. He's new to the subject matter, and I said, you can't just rush into these things. You got to do it step by step. One, you got to give them enough time to get used to your presence in the area. And if you don't think they don't know the difference between me, you, and then the guy down the street, you better think again.
Yeah, and you can't be messing around with their feeding areas and things like that. You gotta observe outside of that.
Well, and that's just it. Like I told him, I said, you gotta take your time. You can't rush into this, because if you do, you could just ruin a good area.
Oh, yeah.
Or worse, you can get yourself hurt real bad.
And it happens pretty frequently, actually.
Yeah, and I said, people have had bad experiences because they were rooting around in an area way too much and way too deep.
Mm-hmm.
That these things are very territorial.
Oh yeah.
And they don't like humans being in their areas.
No.
There's times they tolerate us pretty well, but then there's times they get really upset about it.
Yeah, either they'll bug out of the area or they'll get violent.
Yeah, and my self-preservation mode is in heightened degree when I'm in those areas.
Yeah, me too.
That's why I don't go in the woods without a gun. But and that's the thing is that like I told him, I said you gotta take your time with this. You can't just can't barrel into it thinking that you're going to find all this stuff, because I said even footprints. Where I was at, it just started the monsoon season, and in that area it was kind of dry. The lake was down a little bit, but in the same token, it was dry enough that it wasn't the ground wasn't soft beneath the initial dust cover of the land.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see a whole lot unless you catch them right after they leave, or if they're around a wet area. Now that game warden saw some, but he went into the tree line, and he also went into the tree line where there was some standing water, and I think that's where he found all those footprints, because he was telling me it wasn't very far from the landing area.
Yeah.
Of where the boat launch is. So, it's just one of those things. You gotta, it's like anything else, like a criminal investigation. You gotta develop it. You just can't get everything right off at first. You gotta kind of piece it together, and
yeah, I think,
and some of these newer people don't quite understand that.
I think that's a problem most people have when they get involved in this. They want to just run out and instantly find something, and it's not the way it works. You're right. You have to develop what's going on in the situation, and really pay attention to what small signs are, and see if that continues. See if you can actually get closer to what's going on there.
Exactly. See, and that's talking to other researchers, and I got a pretty vast net of other researchers that I pull from that, throw ideas at them. And it's like I told Jim King, I said, sprayed that pepper spray, and he started grunting and hissing and growling at me, and he said, "You pissed it off." I said, "You think?"
Well, listen, man, I got to run. I'm running out of time here. Definitely keep us updated as to what's going on down there.
I will.
And
most definitely,
like I mentioned, we'll probably, I don't know, maybe next week or so we'll do a group chat. You and me and Don and Jeremiah, and maybe we'll get Milo on too.
Oh hell, we ain't talked to Milo in a while.
I know he's been asking me, so I guess I better put him on the list.
Yeah. Well, we get Milo on there. I'll go full tilt on Jeremiah and just give him all three.
We'll do it then.
Yeah, that'll work.
All right, man. Well, listen, enjoy your evening. I know you're there with the kids, so
Oh yeah.
Thanks for the update, and we'll talk again real soon.
That'll work.
Thanks, everyone, for joining me this week. Be sure to tune in again next week as we explore another account from a witness of the unknown.